Going on, Jerome's. So as we rapidly approach NFL offseason and free agency, you have to take a look back at what Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell have done in recent years. Notably, remember, last offseason, the Vikings were north of the salary cap, around $25 million. They had to make some tough cap decisions. They were still able to sign a couple of, well, premium contract free agents. Well, let's put it that way. And Kwesi still trying to rebuild this thing, the competitive rebuild, but starting to get out of the woods and starting to play some analytical money ball, all that stuff. And I got faith. I think the Vikings are going to clear up some cap space again this season, and the Vikings are going to get after it, land them some Justin Madubuike, maybe some Christian Wilkins, maybe some L'Jarius Sneed, maybe some Jalen Johnson, maybe Winfield Jr. Who knows, man? But take a look back at 2023's offseason free agents. So this is split up weird. So you got players that left, players that signed here with the Vikings, as well as re-signees, and then a couple other stray ones at the end, which we'll get to. So up at the top, Chris Boyd ended up being a special teamer for the Cardinals. I think he was let go midseason, brought back down the practice squad. Who knows? Adam Thielen. So Thielen was a tough one where, the Vikings cut Thielen. He's Mr. Friggin' Minnesota, Mankato State University Community College. But I feel like everyone got what they wanted, where the Vikings freed up cap space, got out from underneath of one of Spielman's contracts, was able to draft Jordan Addison, and Addison looks like a young superstar. Thielen was able to get a nice little payday, 3 years, $25 million. Vikings weren't going to pay that. And Carolina was ass, thank you, this year, but they were in catch-up mode. They didn't really have other receiving options, and Thielen was able to get wide receiver one work. He had 103 catches for 1,014 yards, 4 touchdowns on 137 targets. Now, remember, in 2022, when the Vikings went 13-4, won the division, Thielen only had, I believe, 107 targets, so it wasn't a wide receiver one work, but Thielen's getting that work, and everyone's happy, so we're good to go. Irv Smith. All right, so Irv getting hurt right before the trade deadline facilitated the Hockenson trade, because I don't know if the Vikings make that deal if Irv doesn't get hurt, like literally the game before the trade deadline. But he inked up with Cincinnati, and it was supposed to be him and Jumpin' Joe Burrow a long time, but didn't quite work out. So Burrow got hurt. Irv put up 18 catches for 115 yards, 1 touchdown on 26 targets in 12 games. A touchdown, I believe, was from Jumpin' Jake Browning. So whatever. Diesel Dalvin Tomlinson. So I would have been fine bringing back Dalvin Tomlinson, but the Browns just decided to put stupid money on the table. 5 years, $57 million for Dalvin Tomlinson. $14.25 million per year, as well as $27.5 guaranteed. I forgot how insane that contract was, man. But Tomlinson, he did not live up to that contract this year. And even though the Browns defense was amazing and he was a part of that, 61.2 PFF grade, 28 tackles, 3 sacks in 16 games. He was average. Like he was certainly not worth $14.25 million. Also, remember, this isn't part of free agency, but the Vikings, traded Zadarius Smith to the Browns. He had I think he had 5.5 sacks this year. I don't really know. Bobby Evans, Eric Kendricks. All right, so the way that Kendricks played in 2022, you're thinking, okay, maybe Kendricks is done. Maybe the transition to split linebackers in the 3-4, maybe that's not really his thing after he had played so well in the Zimmer 4-3 for so many years. But I mean, Kendricks had a little bit of a mini renaissance, man. 117 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 15 games, 83.4 PFF tackling grade, was actually the best of his career. And I mean, the Chargers, they had issues with Brandon Staley, and the defense was spotty at times, but Kendricks was actually pretty damn solid out in LA. And I'm glad that he could have a couple good seasons. He's probably going to make the turnover this year, even though the Chargers are over the cap. But I would like to see Kendricks play a year with Jim Harbaugh and hopefully have one more good season with the Chargers. And that's the thing too, where Thielen, you saw, had some good football left him. Same thing with Eric Kendricks. And the entire motif has been let go of a player a year too early versus a year too late. You get a little bit more cap savings and potentially trade them. So I sign off of that, man. I'm on board with that, where you don't want to have your players fall off season be on your books, if that makes sense. Duke Shelley, I wanted Duke Shelley back, man, but also he got cut. And then, scaling on down. So the Vikings cut Dalvin Cook. He signed with the Jets, 1 year, $7 million. Speaking of players who didn't have much left, so 2022 Dalvin was interesting because he had that 81-yard touchdown run against the Bills. He had that 53-yard touchdown run against the Dolphins. He had the long-ass screen pass against the Colts. And I feel like that colored how people perceived Dalvin in 2022. I mean, where Dalvin was 28 and or heading into his 28-year-old season. And Dalvin, it wasn't so much that the big plays weren't there. They were. Like, Dalvin could still hit home runs, but the problem was the carries that he had turned into 9-yard gains were going for 5, and runs that were going for 5, where he would grind it out, were going for 2, or no gain, that whole thing. So I mean, Dalvin went to the Jets and he ran for 214 yards on 67 carries, 0 touchdowns, 3.2 yards per carry. Did have a couple nice runs. Well, he had one nice run in the playoffs with the Ravens, but yeah, it was time. Like, he wasn't worth the 10.4 that he was due to make as his base salary, and the Jets will tell you, like, he certainly wasn't worth the 7 either. Patrick Peterson. So Peterson signed a 2-year, $14 million deal. I forgot how big that contract was, man. But Patrick Peterson got paid. Would have liked to have him back at a reasonable rate, but Peterson went out to the Steel City, 59.8 PFF coverage grade, 5 touchdowns allowed. 2 of them Brock Purdy. Because remember week 1, the Niners were in Pittsburgh, and Patrick Peterson was talking mad noise about Brock Purdy. Didn't quite work out. Also had 10 missed tackles, so yeah. JPJ. The original JPJ, Joey Porter Jr., him rising up as cornerback 1 definitely put a damper on P squared. And Sean Sullivan played the slot in Pittsburgh, but he was actually slightly better than Patrick Peterson. Well, I mean, he is 6 years younger too, so who knows. But for Vikings free agents, so Josh Oliver coming over from the Ravens, 3 years, $21 million. Now, yes, sticker shock, sure, and also his role is clearly defined as the tight end 2 blocking guy, but if the Vikings want to get some nastiness back in the trenches, Josh Oliver is going to spearhead things. Also, I think he's underrated as a receiver. Byron Murphy coming over from the Cardinals. Now, his 2-year deal had a lot of injury provisions, and Murph getting dinged up towards the end of the year, I mean, that really changed the game for the Vikings defense in the last 2 games against the Lions and 1 against the Packers. But Murph, 57 tackles, 13 passes broken up, 3 interceptions. PFF didn't grade him out great, but it was very clear that he was head and shoulders above the rest of the Vikings cornerbacks, and would love to have him back next season. Bradbury, I don't know. Like, his contract isn't guaranteed until the 3rd day of the new league year. So if the Vikings want to make a change, they could. No muss, no fuss. Davenport. All right, so Davenport was, I mean, he is Kwesi's Folly right now. So 1 year, $13 million. Also a void year added, so $6.8 million dead in 2024. But 118 snaps, 7 pressures, 2 sacks. So when he was healthy and on the field, he was good, and that's been the story of his entire career so far. He won't be back. I don't think he's going to get significant money. So who knows? Lowry on a 2-year, $8.5 million deal was also not great. So, I mean, Lowry got 0 sacks. I believe only had 4 pressures this season in limited work before he got dinged up. So, I mean, I understand that Lowry was signed as a stopgap, but, I mean, throwing around $8.5 million as, speaking of throwing around money, so Madison, 2-year, $7 million deal. Madison did run for 700 yards, but 0 touchdowns, which is kind of amazing. 3.9 yards per carry, and it just seemed like the running game was better when Cam Akers was in there. It seemed like it was better when Ty Chandler was in there. And Madison, I like Madison a lot. I respect him, but maybe he was better off when he was Dalvin's backup. Maybe that's his role. Maybe the Vikings, if they bring in a guy like Josh Jacobs, Madison can still be a very solid running back too. But also, are you going to pay $3.5 million for a running back too? Who knows? DePaulo got robbed. Should have been first team All-Pro. Was named second team. Nick Mullins. I mean, Nick Mullins will sling it, man. Like, Nick Mullins will put up yards and will deliver a good ball. He'll also make very stupid mistakes, but you get what you get. And also, I mean, Nick Mullins, he's only going to be 29 next year, so Who knows? Dalton Risner was a great pickup. Hopefully they re-sign him. Oli Udoh tore up his quad. Because remember, they've given him pretty decent money, like $2.582 million. So that was significant backup offensive lineman money. Maybe they run it back, depending on what happens with the quad. I would look more for league minimum, but Greg Joseph, 1 year, $2 million. He was fine at times this year. Bullard was solid against the run, even though Bullard's going to be 30. I mean, just above league minimum, sure. Brandon Powell. I like Brandon Powell a lot. I would love to have him back. Powell this year, 29 catches, 324 yards receiving and a touchdown, 11.2 yards per carry, 18 first downs, 2 failed tush pushes. But also he weighs like 160 pounds. But I would like to have Powell back as like a wide receiver 3-4 and return guy. There you go. Troy Reeder, Schlutman filled in decent for Bradbury to start the season. Experience with Chris Cooper and also as that swing interior backup. I think he's solid. Joejuan Williams was on and off the practice squad. Did get in a little bit later on in the season after Murphy got hurt. Also, he signed to a futures deal. That's fine. Gaskin was on and off the Vikings practice squad when they had running back issues. Quisenberry was good, man. He was really good, and love his story. Beat the piss out of cancer, which is fantastic. During his time with the Texans, but I would have him back at a league minimum deal, and he was great as a swing backup tackle after Oli Udoh got hurt, and after apparently they just turned Blake Brandel into a full-time guard. Who knew? N'Keal Harry. I always thought that they could use N'Keal a little bit more. He's on a futures deal, so I guess we'll see. But overall, I mean, the Vikings were in transition last offseason, shedding some key veterans like Thielen and both of the Dolphins, Kendricks and Patrick Peterson. And they did spend some decent money in free agency, namely Oliver, Byron Murphy, Marcus Davenport, Lowry. His contract was actually pretty decent in open free agency, and also re-signing Bradbury. But we'll see what moves they want to make this year, and it all really depends on what happens with Kirk Cousins, what happens with Danielle Hunter, and what happens with Justin friggin' Jefferson. Because if they extend JJ, they can free up a lot of money on the salary cap this year by reducing his cap hit, and maybe we'll go after some big names: Matt Abuke, Jalen Johnson, Winfield Jr. Good times, man. But that's it. That's reviewing Kwesi's 2023 free agents. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Once worth the work, put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skull, production value.